So, I've been sick this week, very annoying because I had a full week of filming planned, but there we go. I've still managed to put a good video for you together today. We're talking about 7 other things that matter in landscape photography. Let's go. So in the video today, we're talking about 7 other things that matter in landscape photography. It's kind of a mixture of mindset and some practical tips that you can not only use to improve your landscape photography, but also improve your enjoyment of it. And after all, that's really what counts. Before we get into it, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you need a website, a domain name, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace. So number 1 is fitness. There are a lot of people out there that will not walk more than 500 meters or so from the car in order to take a landscape picture. Now that's fine if you have restricted movement or something like that, but for most people, I think it's a mindset that people get into that they don't want to go too far from the car, but enjoying the outdoors a little bit more, getting in touch with the landscape, spending time in the landscape can really improve your photography, and that means getting a bit further away from the car. And to do that, we need to become less sedentary. I see it so often. There are just far too many people who are just not active enough. It's sad to say, but you may realize that you're one of them. I certainly realized that in myself. I'm way too sedentary most of the time. It's something I've really committed to solving because about 3 years ago I injured my back, and it just sort of became, I was restricted for a long time, but it then became a bit of an excuse as to not do more activity and more fitness. It's something I'm working on myself. I am committing to you to get much, much fitter. I want to lose about 4 stone in weight because being fit and being active in the landscape, moving around the hill quickly, massively improves your landscape photography. Because say if you're on a mountain and you see above you there is something incredible that you want to shoot, the light is just right. This has happened to me. The light is just right. If you don't think you've got the fitness to get up there quickly, it can be a real downer. It can bring you down. It can make you feel rubbish, and it hampers your enjoyment of what you're doing. If you're fit and you can bound up there quickly without even thinking about it, you get there, you're not particularly out of breath, you recover quickly, all your focus is then going to be on making that picture rather than being a sweaty mess like I am a lot of the time when I get to the top. It definitely is going to make you feel better all round, be more active. All that extra energy that you've got can go into creating that picture. So it's definitely something I'm going to be working on. Please hold me to account if I'm not losing weight as we go through the next 6 months or so. Hold me to account, and hopefully you can help me out as well. Now number 2 is food. It's important to everybody, isn't it? Very straightforward. But having the right food when you're on a photography trip or a tour or a long day out shooting, having the right food is pretty important. If you are on a really long walk and you know you're going to be expending a lot of energy, have high energy food, so something sugary, because if your blood sugar drops, you get that horrible tired feeling where it's difficult to put one step in front of the other. If you have that sugary food to build that glucose back up, get that energy going again and keep you going through the day. Having some carbs the day before will help as well. But aside from that, having a nice bit of food in the middle of the day can really lift your spirits, especially if it's something warm. You saw when I did my wild camp, having that hot food at the top of the mountain in the evening and in the morning when it's starting to get cold can make all the difference to your morale. Just something simple like bringing a flask of coffee, pouring that hot coffee into the cup when you're sheltered from the wind and it's cold. It makes all the difference. It makes it special, and it can just get you going for the next stage of your shoot and your day. Number 3 is friendship. Now I talked about this a few weeks ago on the video about why I do landscape photography. I love the solitude of landscape photography. I talked a little bit about it last week on the video, but just before we talk about that, look at this. I printed the image from last week. Pretty happy with that. It looks pretty great. Just wanted to show you that quickly. But yeah, solitude is a big part of my landscape photography, but there are times when you get creatively stunted, you get stuck in a rut, you get photographer's block, as it were, and it just becomes difficult to motivate yourself to get out over and over again and continue shooting landscape photography, particularly if your schedule is tight as well. It's just so easy to stay inside, especially as the winter is coming as well. Going out with a friend can make all the difference. Motivate each other. You can have more fun walking and talking at the same time. Just sort of bounce ideas off each other creatively when it comes to actually shooting as well. You can then compare and contrast your images at the end. Then it just becomes a whole sort of, it's just a completely different experience, and that might be what you need to push through that creative block that you're currently stuck in. And if you're not stuck in one, it's just going to be another interesting and good experience anyway. So next up, we have family. I'm not quite sure why, but I've had quite a few questions about family recently, and people finding it difficult to grind out the time to get out and do landscape photography. And I completely understand that, because it used to be an issue that I had. Doing landscape photography can be time consuming, especially if you have to drive quite a distance to get to a good location. It isn't very conducive with a family life. If you have a wife or a husband or a girlfriend or boyfriend, that kind of thing, and they're not into landscape photography, or they're not particularly fans of the outdoors either, it becomes difficult to grind out that time and separate away from them. You've got work, you've got other commitments, everything you're doing just doesn't really fit in with doing landscape photography. If you have children on top of that and responsibilities with dependents, it just becomes even more difficult. So grinding out the time is exceptionally hard. It's something I used to struggle with a lot. I solved it, I suppose, by making landscape photography my full-time job. But I didn't used to. My wife used to come with me a lot of the time because she enjoys the outdoors as well. We used to go for walks. But then still, when I was stopping to do a landscape photograph and taking my time in an area, my wife didn't particularly like it when she had to wait sort of 20 minutes, half an hour in one spot for me to take an image, and it just extends that time. And it is difficult, and I get that. There isn't really an easy solution for this, but I would recommend that you just over-communicate with your family, with your wife, with your husband, about when you want to get out. Plan ahead, plan a trip with friends, and then obviously be useful when you are around. Earn that sort of time away doing landscape photography. Hopefully you've got a partner that understands, they understand what it does for you, your need to be creative, and the positive benefits that it has on you, your happiness and your mental health. But explain that to them. Don't just let them think that you're disappearing off to get away from them. Talk to them. Let them know what landscape photography means to you. I think you'll find they'll be pretty supportive. The next few are a little bit more practical, and that starts with outdoor skill. As we move away from the city into the countryside, it does become more difficult, and having skills around being outdoors is very important, and it can really make the difference between you being safe, between you getting into the right position, being able to get to a location to do your photography. So that includes getting up into mountains, and it could be anything from simply reading a map right up to those hardcore bushcraft skills that will see you existing way off the grid for long periods of time. It's something I'm very interested in, because having spent some time with Morten Hilmer recently, and he spent all the time in the Arctic when he was in the forces, and he started creating some videos around bushcraft, and it's something I'm really interested in exploring myself, doing a bit more, spending more time off the grid in the wilderness, and I think those skills are really important. But we can work up to that. So just by simply learning how to read a map, being able to just simple stuff, by getting out more often, experience walking over craggy rocks, get used to sort of looking ahead of you where you're going to walk, get your footing right so you're not going to fall, twist an ankle. I see a lot of people really struggling when they're on top of mountains and things like that. So just by doing it over and over and over again, your skills in the outdoors will improve, and it will definitely impact again on your ability to get into a good location to get those magical, unique landscape photographs. Next is planning. There are loads of quotes about planning and the lack of planning and just how important it is really. And it's no different in landscape photography. Planning can make all the difference, because if you just go out blind, then there's a good chance you're going to come home with nothing particularly special. But if you have a specific plan about a specific location, looking at weather patterns, looking at tide times, sunset and sunrise times, that kind of thing, it can make all the difference to you get in a really great image. I actually quite enjoy going out without a plan sometimes and just going to explore and to scout, and I think that's a big part of it as well, but sort of temper that with other times when you go out with having a really solid structured plan. You need to be flexible within that plan to pivot if things aren't going quite right, but having a plan there to start with really focuses your mind, gets you sort of where you need to be into the right locations, and can be really helpful with your photography overall. Things I do generally, I will start by looking at Google Maps, deciding where I'm going to go. I will then look at the weather. I try not to be sort of too choosy about what the weather is doing, but I'll look for things that can be positive rather than negative. So if I see misty conditions or what conditions that might show that there's going to be a really good sunset or sunrise, I use things like the BBC weather app, the Met Office weather more so because I find that's much more accurate. I use a tide app called My Tide Times. I use Skippy Sky. I use Golden Hour, the Golden Hour app, which is good for sort of predicting whether there's going to be a good sunrise and sunset. And then a really good app, or just a good website, is the Ordnance Survey website. I've talked about this briefly before, but just with a small annual subscription, you get access to all of Ordnance Survey's maps. You can plot routes for your walk or for where you're going to go, and then there's this pretty awesome fly-through mode that sort of shows you where to go. So bringing all that together, it does take some time, maybe an hour or two before you shoot, the night before or something like that, but almost always it pays off. So introducing that sort of planning process and phase into your photography process can really make all the difference. The other alternative is, if you don't like doing that, is to go on a photography tour or a workshop, because a lot of people really benefit from that just by not worrying about any of that and letting the tour leader deal with that for you. I have a tour up at the moment, check down below to join me on an epic adventure of the Lake District in February, start of March, yeah. Okay, so next up we have the non-photographic gear. This makes all the difference. It's so important, especially as we're going into the winter. Having the right winter gear is just essential, absolutely essential to you enjoying and making sure you're in the right place to capture great images. Clothing is probably the most important part because, as some people say, there is no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. So very simply, the way to go is to layer your clothing. Have a base layer of some synthetic or merino type material, then have a fleece type layer underneath that. Then you want to have a really warm coat. A down jacket comes highly recommended from me. They are amazing if you've never had one before. Then on top of that, you will want to have a raincoat because most down jackets aren't waterproof. So having that rain cover over the top will really make the difference. And then as you get warm and cold and the conditions change, just remove those layers, stick them in your bag. Most of them are quite lightweight, and that's the way to go. Personally, for my trousers, I don't bother with waterproof trousers. I generally will put some sort of legging type things underneath in the cold weather, then I'll just put my walking trousers over the top. If they get wet, then they usually dry pretty quickly because they're synthetic. That's just me, but it's probably a good idea if you struggle with the cold and things to have waterproof trousers as well. Hat, gloves, all that sort of sensible stuff as well will really improve your enjoyment. I've also just invested in a pair of ski goggles. This year I want to get up into the mountains in the winter a lot more. When you've got that snow and wind blowing in your face, the ski goggles can really make a difference. They help with safety actually, because if it's windy and you've got the snow and wind and rain blowing in your face, you're forced to look down. But if you've got the ski goggles on, you can still look up and see where you're going and not miss the path, get near to an edge or fall off a cliff or anything silly like that. They look all right as well, but I'm guessing I probably won't see anyone up there at that time of year, in that type of weather anyway, so I don't really care how I look, to be honest, but you might see it. Now, another bit of non-photographic gear that I think is really important is a bag. My bag is the F-Stop Suka bag. I don't say this lightly, but it's changed my life as a landscape photographer because it's big. It gets everything in that I need. When you've got it, I mean, it is heavy, but when you've got it on, it's supremely comfortable. For someone with a bad back, it just sits really nicely, compresses my spine a little bit, which makes it more comfortable. And yeah, just a supreme bag. high quality, completely waterproof throughout. And that's the bit that has really made the difference for me, because I see loads of people struggling with bags whacking covers over the top and things like that, but mine is completely waterproof throughout. If it's wet on the floor, I can just chuck it down, it opens up, I can get all my gear out really easily, and it has made such a difference to my photography. It's made it easier, it's made it just more convenient, and that has a knock-on effect of making my photography better as well, with one less thing to worry about. I also carry a powerful torch with me, just a head torch. They're pretty cheap to buy on Amazon. I have a penknife, a lighter, all those kind of things that are going to really make the difference if you get into trouble. I carry a power pack to charge my phone as well. Lots of stuff like that just to make it a bit more comfortable and make sure you're going to be safe when you're out for a full day shooting out and about in the great outdoors. So all of those things together, I just thought I'd share with you briefly while I have failed to get out this week due to being ill, but I hope you've enjoyed it. This video, like I said, is sponsored by Squarespace. Head over to squarespace.com to start your free trial today, and then once your free trial is finished and you're happy with what you've got, put in the code FIRSTMAN and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. Leave a comment down below, let me know what you think, and I'll see you on another one very, very soon. I'll be out again next week once I'm feeling better and this horrible cough has gone. I'm Adam, this is First Man Photography, out.